Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock, what we can expect moving forward and all of that good stuff. And I'll give you my thoughts on that. So if you enjoy my, thoughts, opinions, perspective on the charts, whatever, definitely don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. However, again, if you enjoy my analysis, thoughts on the chart, TA, whatever, I do share my thoughts with our members every single day the market is open, as the market is trading, mainly on Tesla stocks, sometimes other stocks for just $3 a month or $5 a month. Gives you access to the first tier, which is Tesla and sometimes other stocks, plus NVIDIA in the second tier as well for that $5 a month. If you're interested, link is below. But yeah, let's jump into it and I'll give you my thoughts on the charts. So NVIDIA closing the day, unfortunately still down actually 0.7%, closing at 117.7, which compared to the market is definitely on the weaker end. However, you can make an argument the fact that NVIDIA was down mainly because of Micron earnings, right? Micron did report earnings down actually 8% on the day. So you can definitely make the argument the fact that, NVIDIA, AMD, I assume even Broadcom, most chip sectors, I assume, yeah, flat to slightly weak, definitely the weaker end of the spectrum today, arguably because of Micron. So that's, probably something to attribute to it. However, NVIDIA, pretty frustrating morning, right? Definitely had a bit of a frustrating morning, right? It's still, by the way, it's still within this 1 hour wedge. But in the morning, it had a few slip ups, right? It was very close to breaking under. You can see right here, very, very close to breaking under. It didn't, right? The most important thing is it didn't close under without, not gonna lie, it was pretty damn close, but it didn't, right? It actually held exactly where it needed to. And you can see towards the end of the day, it was also very close to breaking under. And then the last 5 or so minutes of the day had a massive spike in volume on candles, probably as, options really start expiring. Today was OPEX, of course. Triple or quad witching, I forgot which one it was, but nonetheless, quite a lot of options, like 4.2 trillion or something like that of options expiring today, and it had a very nice spike towards the last 5 or so minutes of the day, which ended up getting that nice push right back into the middle of the wedge. So essentially the way I'm personally looking at NVIDIA right now and my current thoughts moving forward, it's pretty simple, right? We're still in the wedge. I personally want to see it break out of this wedge, right? And the way I look at it, personally speaking, is if NVIDIA essentially starts breaking above, I would probably, I would give it a little bit of extra room just in case, because, you want to definitely avoid false, I guess, breakdowns or breakouts, like, for instance, that we had in the morning. A break in, especially a close, in my opinion, of about 119, okay, the bulls are starting to step in, and this, you can start making an argument, is going to be a bullish breakout. However, if NVIDIA starts closing candles, in my opinion, below 116.5 or lower, okay, now I want to be starting to get a little more concerned. Right now, I want to be starting to think that, maybe the bulls aren't really stepping in, and maybe this is just going to kind of fade away and not really get that next push that, I still personally would like to see on NVIDIA, right? Because again, the way I look at it is if NVIDIA does actually push out of this wedge to the upside, right? I personally want to see it make its way back up. So again, about the 126-ish region, which is where that 50 EMA sits roughly. But I also wouldn't be fully shocked if, especially if the market complies, if NVIDIA pushes even higher, closer to 130, right? Those are my personal targets, right? That's what I'll be looking for, assuming it breaks out of this wedge, somewhere in that range, 126-ish to closer to 130-ish potentially, right? Now, obviously, if everything goes to plan and let's say the market just bottoms out here and off to, fresh new all-time highs in the market, and congratulations, the correction's over, right? Assuming that scenario plays out, which obviously we're not there just yet, and it's kind of impossible to know for sure. But assuming that's the path that we end up taking down the road, let's say a month or two from now, there's a chance that NVIDIA essentially does finally break out of this descending channel, and it essentially goes to fresh all-time highs. So those are the main things I'm looking at right now on NVIDIA, right? The very quick look on the weekly chart over here as well. You can see now, again, some concerns. The fact that the 21 and the 8 EMA are crossed to the bearish side, right? Definitely still shows a little bit of momentum sort of slowing down. However, NVIDIA barely hanging on to the 50 EMA, pretty much by the sliver, it pretty much closed 7 cents above it. Definitely a little bit close, and barely hanging on to this very large kind of rising wedge, if you will, that NVIDIA is in. As I zoom out, you can get a better look at it, right? So I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hanging on thin ice in my opinion, but it's still hanging on is the point that I'm trying to say, right? It's still hanging on, but it's not convincing. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely a little bit sketch, no questions about that. So those are the main perspectives I would say, right? Those are the main things I've been looking for. It's continuing to hold above the 8 EMA on the daily, which is great, but it is getting some rejection. You can see by the 21 EMA right here, the past, the previous 2 days, couldn't even get there today. So the main way I'm looking at it right now moving forward is really this wedge. If this wedge gets that bullish breakout, 126 to potentially even 130, yeah, I can see it. I can see it. But if we break to the downside, if we start losing, 116 and change, and we start breaking underneath this wedge, okay, then we're probably going to start fizzling out, in my opinion. Most likely make our way back down closer to like 113 or something like that, and from there it could potentially get even worse, right? One step at a time, of course, but this would ruin quite a lot of the bullish momentum that the stock technically is still holding on to. So in my opinion, the bulls definitely want to really start to come into this stock, honestly, as early as Monday, really, as early as Monday for sure. So those are the main things I'm looking at. Now, what are some actual like true signs of concern, right? That signs of concern that other people are, a lot of people are mentioning right now on, on X or whatever. This right here, right? This death cross that essentially it's labeled as, it's a death cross. What does that mean? Well, it essentially means that the red line crossed the white line. What are these lines? The 50 daily simple moving average and the 200 daily simple moving average, the red line and the white line respectively. So essentially the 50 crosses the 200. And that's exactly what we've experienced the past few days, right? And it's obviously only getting arguably worse. So that's a little bit of a concern, right? If you go all the way back to the last time that this actually ended up happening, all the way back here, you can see the last time it happened was pretty much right around here. Obviously in this case, when it happened, well, I mean, to be fair, the whole market was selling off. I mean, so let's see if this whole market sells off here as well. But, last time it happened with NVIDIA, it definitely had a pretty severe correction. Arguably, it entered a bear market. So this is something that it's not something you want to fully just ignore. Like it's there. It's kind of looming, as like a like a big storm above the stock, right? So that's something that you want to kind of consider, right? And kind of factor in my opinion, of course, that it's not all clear skies just yet for NVIDIA, right? Something like this is something to watch out for. I mean, Tesla doesn't have it. AMD's been crossed over. Google doesn't have it. Amazon, right? Microsoft actually did cross over. Apple, it's getting close. It's getting close. But, Meta still looks pretty damn good. Netflix looks absolutely phenomenal, not even remotely close, right? So, the fact that NVIDIA does have that crossover, let's see what happens to Microsoft, right? With Microsoft, you can see crossover right here. And it's, kind of been selling off, to be fair. The market's been selling off, but just something to consider. Now, it's not perfect, right? It's not all exactly that simple. It's like, oh, it crossed over, that's it, it's all over, sell everything. No, it's not always that simple. For instance, Microsoft, you can see here, had many crossovers back and forth, right? So it's could be one of those instances. Like, again, it's not always just that simple, but it's just something to consider and something to not just fully ignore, at least in my opinion. So let's see how that actually plays out. But regardless, I think the short-term play is still the fact that, I like that this is still setting up pretty tightly in this wedge. I still like the fact that the EMAs are crossed bullish, right? I like that they're getting all very, very tight. And the stock is, in my opinion, still coiling up for a pretty large move. And assuming the market wants to finally go risk on starting next week, I can't imagine NVIDIA wouldn't follow that rally. Now, obviously, nobody knows. And I don't know for sure, but I would expect it to follow if the market decides to essentially go back to risk on. Because again, you have to understand, the market did go through a lot of turbulence the last 2 weeks, right? I mean, we had FOMC, we had JPOW, we had the expiration, we had today we had OPEX coming up with a lot of options expiring. So, the days even leading up into OPEX can absolutely influence a lot of things. Last week and whatnot, we had CPI, PPI, we had jobless, we had a lot of turbulence the last 2 weeks that the market has been facing, and in my opinion has been, honestly, at least for the last few days, been holding up decently well, right? So let's see if not all of that is kind of behind the market, and pretty much the only thing we have to quote unquote look forward to are the tariffs on the 2nd of April. Let's see if the market has a bit of a relief, if you will, a little bit of a stress relief. Let's see if that actually happens, which in other words, to me at least, means risk on. But yeah, so let's see how that plays out, right? But again, the main thing I'm personally watching for short term, at the very least, for the next week or two potentially, essentially this breakout, right? I want to see this breakout most likely as early as Monday, and that should dictate essentially what NVIDIA wants to do next, in my opinion at least. So I think that's pretty much it, really. In terms of options flow, let's take a look at options flow, see if NVIDIA's got anything interesting. Definitely a little bit more bullish than bearish, but I have to say, NVIDIA's options flow today was surprisingly low. Like, not a lot of flow came in today on the stock compared to what I usually see. So definitely a little bit more on the quiet side for sure of things. There's no question about that. And you can see down here the confirmed bullish or bearish flow on NVIDIA. Only 3 million confirmed bullish flow. So again, very nice and muted, if you will, day for NVIDIA in terms of options. Nothing crazy, nothing wild, nothing really bearish or bullish. Very, very muted, very tame which is not often, the case for the stock, but in this case, it of course is. So again, I'm personally just watching this wedge. This is the only thing I care about short term, and this will to me dictate what happens over the next week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even month. But this wedge, in my opinion, is pretty important to see the continuation up, or unfortunately, momentum has faded. So anyways, that's all I got for you. Let me know what you think down below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you for the next one. Peace.